Hey guys, here's the first of a two-part interview I did with Aetherius Society minister Oscar Leon. Before I play it, I just want to make it clear that although I do believe that extraterrestrial life is a inevitability in the universe, I haven't seen any evidence to support the particular claims of this group, their version of the extraterrestrials, telepathy, astral projection, and whatever else. Really, this interview is just about listening to the beliefs of other people, being able to express how crazy you find them without being a complete jerk about it. Perhaps thinking twice about whether or not some of your own beliefs are any more firmly grounded than these. So without further ado, let's get right on to the interview with Oscar Leon. So, Oscar, could you share with me a bit, what is the Aetherius Society?
The Aetherius Society. I know it's kind of a tricky word to pronounce. Aetherius, like ether, basically. That's where that name comes from, ether. Aetherius Society. What is it? To try and just sum it up, we're a group of people that want to be of service to the world. We want to help the world. We're interested in the betterment of humanity through enlightenment, healing, those various ways, spiritual development, as well as doing this in cooperation with beings not from this earth, highly evolved beings not from this earth, as well as from this earth. But the idea is that in cooperation with these, what we call cosmic masters, through the study of their teachings, through the performance of some of the missions that they established through our founder, Dr. King, on Earth, we can help to better serve our fellow mankind, the rest of humanity, for the purpose of global enlightenment, world enlightenment. Our desire is similar to many quote-unquote religions of earth, just to live in a peaceful and enlightened, joyful world. But there are certain, aspects of our teachings that are perhaps unique from the rest of, you call mainstream religions, and we can get into that after. But basically, we're just a service-oriented organization. We're a nonprofit, we're a church, we're a religion, we're a philosophy, we're a metaphysical path, we're a brotherhood, a spiritual brotherhood, all the above. Instead of just trying to figure out names for all these different things, somebody asked me, what's the Aetherius Society? Well, it's a way of giving service to the world.
So what are some of the, philosophies or tenets of this society?
I'll try and cover it all very briefly.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like asking someone to define, it's like...
Yeah. A lot of people, take a look at our teachings, or our website, or our publications, and say, hey, this is kind of like Christianity, this is kind of like Buddhism, this is kind of like yoga, what is it? Well, essentially, I'll take you through the main beliefs, starting with the most complete. We believe in something that we refer to as the absolute. Some people call it God, the Great Spirit. It's been known by various names, but it's something that we believe is behind creation, throughout all of creation, and will be there after creation as we know it. It's something that's infinite, and yet something more than that. So it's something that we can't really fathom, but it's this allness. It's this allness that contains everything and that pervades everything. And we also believe that all of manifestation, all of creation in the universe as we know it, are aspects or sparks of this divinity, of this absoluteness, which through this process of evolution, all these different aspects are slowly returning, so to speak, back to this allness, this absolute, this great being of oneness. So which means everything is alive, everything is living, and that is, very central to our belief. Not only are human beings living and evolving, but, so are the rocks, so are the plants, so are the atoms that make up this, table that, we're seated at. We believe that everything has life. a form of life. Maybe not the kind of life we're used to with the 2 arms and 2 legs, but it's alive. It has some aspect of consciousness, and it is evolving. So that takes us, to this whole concept of extraterrestrials. We certainly recognize that we're not the only life in the solar system. We're not the only life in this galaxy. And that there is actually more advanced life, even just in the solar system. We believe that we've been visited by advanced masters throughout our history. Most of the major world teachers and leaders and religious founders, we believe, were cosmic masters, beings who came from other worlds, avatars, as the Hindu religion refers them to, who came to teach for a certain mission, had something specific to do, raised up humanity just a little bit, left some seeds, and off they went. And we also believe that even in just recent history this has happened. Another very, very important core tenet or belief to our path is the fact that the Mother Earth is also a living being that is growing and evolving and highly advanced, much more than any of us, combined here on Earth. Not only that, she, in recent history, has received what we call her primary initiation. We go through different stages in our lives, just in our human life, going from an infant to a child to a teenager. We have different stages of puberty, so to speak, different stages that initiate a new stage in our life. Well, the Mother Earth, kind of in an analogous kind of way, is approaching a new stage in her life. And what that means, what we believe that to mean, and have been told that means, is she will be rising, in her vibrations will be increasing. Her body will rise to a new form of existence, a more subtle form of life, a more subtle physical reality on her surface. And so what does that mean for the rest of humanity? And this is where it kind of all comes into play. The Cosmic Masters coming, George King and his mission, our desire to help and uplift the world. Well, she's rising in vibration, and that is going to shortly take its effect in full on Earth, because not everybody's going to be able to withstand this heightened vibration. It's a gradual process, and a lot of the masters from Earth and beyond Earth are here to help with this transitional process, that the more gradual they can make it, the more of humanity can remain to live on this new Earth, so to speak, and take our place on this planet. And so essentially that means, world enlightenment.
And obviously, I mean, when you say frequency, I'm not talking about a radio. I'm not talking about a radio frequency. I'm not talking about the literal. It's more like a sort of a concept for me, at least. It's
yeah.
Although you use these English words and they have definitive meanings, but what you just brought up was something that is kind of difficult to define.
Yeah, although when we mention frequency, we are referring to a vibration, and also tied into our beliefs is that not only is everything alive, but through being alive, you have movement. There's vibration. There's a degree of vibration in everything in existence, and that vibration gives off a light, gives off a sound, even gives off a color. So everything is vibrating at a certain rate, with a certain amplitude, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what we can measure, the vibrations of the frequencies that we can measure with our current day scientific instruments is, and I know that, much of the scientific community will admit this, only a very limited range of what they believe is out there as far as vibration or things that they can detect, as far as light spectrum, sound, et cetera, and even other areas that they are not even aware that can be measured, at this day and age. So when we speak of the Mother Earth rising to a higher frequency, and the Earth and the humanity, also rising to a higher state of frequency, yes, it's a certain level of vibration. It's a physical thing. Our bodies right now, this type of matter that we inhabit is a physical vibration. And when it becomes more higher, it becomes more what you can refer to as more subtle, you know. There have been experiences where people see ghosts or fairies or apparitions or things that are kind of hazy, you know. We believe that, yes, there are instances when certain beings from a higher realm or a different realm of vibration kind of slowly lower the vibration so that we can kind of detect it with our eyes, which measures certain frequency vibration. But it's just kind of a glimpse that, yes, there is this range of frequency, range of vibration, which kind of brings up another aspect of our teaching, is that there are different realms of vibration, different realms of life. So we're currently living in in what we call the physical realm, which is a certain collection of vibrations that we can see and touch and smell and hear, and et cetera, et cetera. But there are other realms that have perhaps higher vibrations, but also there are other realms that have lower vibrations, which throughout the centuries have been referred to as the hells or the heavens, you know, referring to the higher frequencies. So it's, you know, when we're talking about frequencies, yeah, I am referring to a very physical thing.
Okay, I see. So we have these different frequencies. Well, actually, let's move forward a bit here, because I'll need to process this. because
Sure.
because I'll admit that I mean, what I find interesting about when I was reading this, and by the way, I think that the quickening is what you guys might have called it happened started in the early 60s, right?
1964, yeah.
Right. So the interesting thing about when I read the website is that, as someone who doesn't believe in God or doesn't believe in anything that's at least been has been sort of like put forward to me, is that I can understand a good deal of what's being said here, but there's always certain things that I guess I can see, and I just don't have any. I don't have any, like. First of all, it doesn't seem to be defined well enough for me. But also, it seems like when I see them, I'm like, but how can they possibly have enough evidence to be able to know this? Like,
Right.
For instance, like you said that these beings are on different realms. You said that they have different frequencies, etc. Well, if we are not able to measure them scientifically, how do we know that these things exist?
Yeah, no, and I completely understand your question. I also had similar questions when I first started studying metaphysics or anything outside of, you know, Catholicism, which was, you know, what I was raised in, and, you know, I questioned everything. Yes, how do you know? I questioned the government, questioned schools, questioned our history books, and to be honest, you know, a good deal of skepticism is healthy. You know, it's healthy. We shouldn't just take things on as blind faith. And our founder, you know, our spiritual master, Dr. King, would also state very publicly, you know, don't take these things on blind faith. Apply them to your logic, investigate them, apply your experience to it. And basically, it's going to be your own discovery. You know, we can't necessarily provide you the proof that you need. You know, even when I was looking for answers, you know, there wasn't one thing or one person that said, "Oh yeah, you just proved it to me." You know, like some mathematical proof that, you know, I had to go through when I was in college. It was something. You know, it's an inner conviction. It's an inner knowing. You know, and this is why one of the reasons I was really turned and attracted to Buddhism, because they, you know, instead of taking our senses outwards to try and get all this information from out there and get all these answers and confirmations and proofs, you know, the Buddhist concept is, you know, go within, go inwards. You know, your consciousness, especially the higher aspects of your consciousness as you develop, you know, when you go within, will reveal a lot of things to you that the current day scientific instruments have not yet revealed or been able to detect or measure. But going back specifically to your question about, you know, if we can't, you know, directly measure these things, measure the other realms, how can we really know? So aside from that whole prelude, there have been people throughout the ages that have been able to have physical experiences, tangible experiences, scientific experiences that they were able to repeat, both themselves as well as with others in a group. And, this kind of goes back to refer to the times of ancient yoga, the ancient yogic, ancient Vedic times, when these they were referred to as the rishis, these ancient seers. They would study the internal mind. They would really tap into some of these inner forces, the states of consciousness, which they felt would be the real instrument to measure reality. And even science is starting to tap in that same knowledge that what your state of consciousness affects very much your outlook in reality. How this person's state of consciousness can affect what they see and hear. So there have been people who've experienced these things repeatedly as far as the other realms, people who have physically traveled to these other realms in what they refer to as their subtle bodies or astral projected bodies. And in cases where it's repeated, like a scientific process, something that you can repeat and also have other people do similar things and have the same experiences. So just to get back to your question again, there have been people who visited these other realms. Their consciousness has visited these other realms. And it's been a process of years and years and decades and centuries of logging this, of studying this, of teaching this. But it's not scientific mainstream. There isn't a device that has been invented with our technology, like some type of detector or radio frequency detector that says, oh yeah, here's another realm. That hasn't yet been invented. I believe it may be at some point down the future. But that's one of the reasons why people have a hard time believing that there are other realms, or there is life behind what we can see, feel, hear, and touch, because they just haven't been able to feel it or see it with their own five senses.
I guess even with what you're telling me now, I guess the refrain against that would be something like, you can have these trips, you can have these voyages, but again, you're the only one who is on that trip. So until there's a way to somehow,
but again, it's not
take that.
Yeah, I mean,
until there's some way to actually share that.
Well, it has
with
been.
someone else.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why it wasn't one person having these trips and voyages and documenting this. It was groups of people studying the mind, studying states of consciousness, studying the subtle reality, studying the subtle senses, what some refer to as the psychic senses. All the psychic phenomena that that we experience in life. These things are studyable, not only best by one person, but by groups, and that they can share with each other. They can confer with each other. They can confer with those who have studied in generations before. So this is generations in the making, and it's through a multitude of people, not just one person or even just one place on Earth. It wasn't just in India or just in the Himalayas, but happened in the Americas, happened in Africa, happened in pretty much all the continents across the world. It's just not mainstream yet, and that's a big hurdle for people to get over. If it's not reported in a scientific journal, if it's not reported in some mainstream news channel, it's hard for them to believe.
And let me just get back to mainstream quickly here, the word mainstream, because I think maybe one of the only reasons we're having this conversation now is because your group is not mainstream in the same way that Christianity is mainstream, for instance. So, I mean, as someone looking at it from the outside, I have some friends, they're like, oh, what, you're going to go interview this group, they're crazy UFO cult, etc. But I mean, the thing is that what they ought to realize maybe is that what you just told me, like some of the things you just told me, really they're not like the tenets of their religions. The tenets of their religions are backed up by no more evidence.
Well, yeah, exactly.
You know? I mean, all their miracles. I mean,
exactly.
what miracles? Do we have any? If we had scientific proof of this, they would, they wouldn't have to call them miracles anymore. They would just be occurrences.
Exactly. And I mean, to be honest with you, I've studied the Aetherius Society teachings for many years, and there's nothing that I have found extremely alien to what I had already studied in Buddhism, in Hinduism, Zen, mystic Christianity, the roots of Christianity, shamanism, paganism. I had studied all these things beforehand. So when I came to the society, it wasn't like it was something new. It just brought it together for me in a way that helped me understand it all better. There are a few aspects of the teaching of the society that are unique. The information that came through the mediumship of Dr. King that is unique, that I have not found anywhere else. And it's mainly to do with describing certain events that happen on these other realms, specifically the lower realms, and most importantly, the initiation of Earth. So there are certain bits of information that is unique that I haven't found elsewhere. But as far as the beliefs, our tenets, that is universal. It's ancient. It's something that just defies and goes beyond any religion, really.
And these things you're bringing up, this is so Dr. George King. Mm-hmm. He is what I've read about him, at least, is that he practiced yoga and he became very proficient with it. Mm-hmm. And this somehow opened up, I guess, some sort of telepathic communication with people on a different, I guess, for lack of a better word, cosmic masters, I think is what they have. You called it?
Yeah. So he was born into a family of, his mother and his grandmother were mediums, advanced psychics, And again, we're not trying to talk about that or the proof of that, but for those who are familiar with that, then this is the information I'm sharing. Even as a young child, George King had many psychic experiences, witnessed lots of psychic phenomena, had experiences of transmitting energy, what he refers to as healing energy, to his mom, who was seriously ill, and had a quote unquote miracle. She recovered and recovered her health. So throughout his life, and through childhood, even through his adolescence, his teenage years, he had lots of this psychic phenomena happening to him. So early on, he started to turn his studies, his attention to studying the psychic phenomena, the occult sciences. He would, attend seances, for example, or go to places that people would consider haunted or whatnot, and he would study these things. He would use his abilities to tap into these subtle realms and study them and talk to others, and et cetera, et cetera. It wasn't until after the war, he was a conscientious objector in the Second World War. He fought as a in the fire brigade in London. When he came back, is when he turned to yoga. He felt that there was something missing, something that beyond all this psychic phenomena, something more deep, more important. And he turned to yoga. He turned to healing and to yoga. But he spent years, almost a decade, practicing over 8 hours a day, these various intensive yogic practices, and not just the yoga that we think of as far as the stretching and the poses, but some of the deeper aspects, the breathings, the mantras, the visualizations, the deep meditations, the meditative states. So this he practiced over many, many years, and it was at near, the latter part of this period that he was contacted. This is what we refer to as the command, because he received a message that came through. It was a voice that he heard. All right, I'm just going to tell you straight up. It was a voice that he heard, and it said, "Prepare yourself, you're to become the voice of interplanetary parliament." He had no idea what that meant. He recognized the form of communication because he wasn't unfamiliar with psychic phenomena and voices beyond the physical. But through his study and practice of yoga, he also realized that this wasn't his own voice. He was in such a great control over his mind and his body that this wasn't some possession. This wasn't just his own ego making this up. He knew it was real, but he had no idea what that meant. He wasn't really studying interplanetary anything. He may have knew about, some outer space phenomena, but it wasn't really his interest. And he knew very little about it and basically knew nothing what that message meant. Wasn't until some time after that he was visited by an Indian yoga master who then kind of basically explained a little bit more what that meant, initiated him into some certain advanced yogic practices so that he could use his yogic abilities to establish a telepathic rapport with these advanced masters from other realms, from a higher frequency of life, these cosmic masters. And that initiated his mission, his next stage in life as a medium for these cosmic masters. And there have been well over 600 of these transmissions, what they refer to as transmissions to date, during his lifetime.
Yeah, so he actually passed away in what I think it was the late
97.
90s. Yeah, exactly. So now I'm going to be frank with you. I'm going to be pretty honest. So as you were discussing that to me, here's what was happening. In my mind, I'm saying, this is nuts, right? This is what's going on in my mind, right?
Sure,
absolutely bonkers. Well, that's about it for part one of this two-part interview with Oscar Leon from the Aetherius Society. I'll have the rest of this interview up next week. Until then, thanks a lot for listening.
Thus concludes this episode of Share a Slice with Sean. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Slices Podcast. You can follow Sean on Twitter at Godless Poutine. Music is by Chromatics and is used with their permission. You can find them on SoundCloud. Links to the music, Twitter feeds and guest sites are provided in the show notes. Thanks for listening and tally ho.